Hey, everybody. Welcome back. David Carr here of the Business Roundtable Podcast. We've got some great guests tonight. And for those of you that don't know, or maybe hearing this for the very first time, hopefully not, but if you are, my company is Steward Your Business. I'm passionate about organizational health, bringing teams together to accomplish great things. We have a couple returning guests and a brand new guest. I'll start with our returning guest. Charlie, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, David, for having me again. My name is Charlie Chen, the cybersecurity specialist of our group here. And our goal at Intelisys is to deliver peace of mind and do it with world-class customer experience at the same time. Back to you, David.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. And Bil Hatch, welcome back, Bil.
Well, thank you for having me once again. My name is Bil Hatch. I am a leadership guide working on my book and getting ready for hopefully a mastermind of my own this year. And I also have my own podcasts series doing things with people.
I like the name of your podcast. What's the name of the production company, Bil?
The name of the podcast is Not Quite After Midnight.
Okay. And your production is what?
The production company is Bald Spots Productions.
Okay, name.
Yeah, which is named
There you
after all
go.
that.
Yeah. Bill, thank you, Bill. I'm glad to have you back. And we've got Cara Corsetti with us. I've gotten to know Cara quite a bit over the last, probably a year or so. We've gotten to know each other, and I'm super excited to have her on. So, Cara, please go ahead and share your a little bit more about your background than just us, because you're new.
Sure.
The audience has never met you before, and we just love to have you having you here.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and talk with all of you. This is great. So Cara Corsetti, and I have about 25 years of experience in the environmental consulting, working with A&E firms, primarily on the West Coast. I also am, all of those years were in operational leadership. So I have run, large teams, business units, have a lot of experience working on the ground as a leader. And through that, I've just become really, really passionate about people and people leadership, organizational health, managing high performance teams, engagement, all of those types of strategies. So I have another degree in industrial psychology, in group dynamics, and working with teams. So I'm really excited. I love this topic. I'm passionate about it. And thank you so much again for having me. So
Yeah, Cara, definitely glad to have you here. And so, yeah, the topic we're going to talk about tonight is really team integration. And so this came out of a conversations we've had in previous episodes. We talked about capacity last week. We've talked about leadership voices. We've talked about delegation. Charlie, you were on that one. Like, how are we delegating? So the conversation I want to have tonight, though, with you guys is, how do we integrate teams successfully? Whether you're a profit, for-profit, nonprofit. I mean, this group is a group. We've integrated different voices in there. And so that's really the premise of this podcast tonight. And I'll be asking some different questions, and you guys can ask each other questions. That's why it's the fun part of a roundtable. So as you, the listener, are watching or listening to this, we welcome your feedback and thoughts and comments. Please drop them in. We're here as resources. The reason we do this is because we want to give back and help you along your own journey. So that's the premise of the Business Roundtable podcast. So for me, I'll just start, and I'd love to give your guys' thoughts, because I met Charlie and Bil through an organization called M&O, another networking group, and lots of different folks, integration there. So, but in the idea of getting teams to come together and working well, and we're a team here. We're creating this experience. And what would you say is kind of, just thinking of, is important for you guys as what's one thing? There's lots of them, but one thing you've found to be influential in getting. Let's just start with an individual. You're bringing somebody new into a team, and what have you found to be a tool or resources or way of being, a behavior that has been beneficial for you? And I'll just start with you, Charlie, because I know you work with different people at different levels. And how would you bring what's one thing you're like, hey, you got to consider this when you're starting to bring in somebody new into a team?
Yeah, so it's number one thing for us is core value fit. It's essentially culture fit, right? So Jeff Hoffman is one of the founders of like the whole like those kiosks and also the Expedia groups at the airport, like the kiosks where you can self-ticket and all that good stuff. And so he talked about hire tough, manage easy. So you want your people to actually vet the potential candidates for culture fit and for core value fit. And so one of our 8 core values that we've identified for our company is OCE, like not OCD, but OCE, obsessive commitment to excellence. And so we can really quickly, just through a few conversations with a few of our people, vet out whether or not somebody has OCE or not. And so you want to hire tough. That way, when you manage easy, you go rock star hunting, and you bring them on board the right people and get out of their way and let them do what they do best and go get their dry cleaning. So that's all from Jeff Hoffman. So, yeah.
So you're more on the front end, Charlie. What I hear you saying is you're looking at the values and this person coming into the organizations. Are they going to be a good fit before you even introduce anybody? You're doing this front end assessment.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
making sure and taking that. Sounds to me like you're taking some more time in your hiring process and not just hiring purely.
Yeah, multiple rounds and having the candidate be exposed to your team members, and they will tell you, is this one of our people?
Mm-hmm. So getting feedback from your team as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great feedback. How about you, Bill? In working with teams, whether it's a nonprofit, for profit, when you're looking at, because here's the thing, right? Bill, it's like there's a need, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to fill in the organization. There's a tendency sometimes just to grab somebody to fill that spot. But how do you do it in a thoughtful way?
And you can never do that. I concur with Charlie quite a bit on the hiring tough and managing easy. You need to know that the person you're bringing in is going to fit with the culture that you've created. And a lot of that can be done by the people you already have in place. Letting them be in on the process of vetting the new hire. Of course, it gets a lot more difficult when you're bringing in someone to consult, someone on a temporary basis. Because you need a specific skill, and you found somebody who has that, a specific set of of talents. But it can still work in a very similar way. I was just thinking of the anybody ever see the movie Office Space, where they bring in the 2 Bobs and everyone is scared out of their minds because their feeling is you only bring in consultants when you're going to fire people. And of course comedy ensues because that's the kind of movie it is. But you need to make sure that your people know and understand what it is you're trying to accomplish by bringing someone in, either on a permanent or a temporary basis. That way people aren't scared out of their minds, or have some other negative feeling about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, being considerate of that. I think that's a great observation, Bill. Cara, how about you? What are some things that come to mind when you're bringing somebody new into a team,
into the organization or an existing team?
Yeah.
So I think the points that Bill and Charlie have made have been really great ones, and I think building on that with the culture fit, and you have an existing team, I think really setting clear expectations for the new employee as well as the employees that are already there working in the team, and ideally going through an exercise where you really talk about norms, right? What are the norms of the team, how, like, what is the culture, and kind of memorializing that so that when what is the communication plan? How do teams communicate together? What is this particular team? What is the standard operating procedure? What are their values? What does success look like, coming into that team? And that can create, I think, a culture of trust and safety where the existing, the employees that are already in the team feel comfortable, like Bill mentioned, they know what's happening. And then the new employee has a roadmap to success, right? And they understand, how they're supposed to behave and how this team behaves. So I would say really looking at norms for the team and setting them up for success, as well as, clear expectations in terms of what they're going to be responsible for, could help. So
I think that's great, Cara, because I think sometimes we're not intentional about that. Somehow we just don't get it.
Right. And be really deliberate. And I think it depends on the organization, but I've been with some very, very large organizations, very large, 30,000 or more employees. And sometimes what happens is you'll have teams where they've been functioning for 10 years and they might have been part of an acquisition themselves. So the actual culture in the organization between teams can be substantially different. And that's why I think it can be so important to really clarify what is this team's values? How do they work together? What are the expectations so that new member can be successful?
Well, I'll dovetail off that because I have experience, Cara, too. I was working at the County of Riverside, which is a big company. And then I went with another large engineering firm that's no longer around anymore, but it was huge. And I just thought coming to this organization as a new team member, I thought, oh my goodness, this is the biggest company I ever worked for. I thought, oh, it'd be so cool to be able to reach out to these different people and connect. And I didn't realize how siloed, like you said here, how siloed things were. And I was really surprised. I was just shocked because I hadn't worked for a company like this before, but I just thought this is a worldwide company, really national. I thought, as a biologist at the time, I thought, I can talk with all these biologists across the country. And I thought this was going to be so cool. And I was like, I just kept hitting barriers. I'm like, what in the world? I don't get it.
I've had that experience too.
You had experience? I'm like, and I felt discouraged because I thought I as a connector and Cara and I are both giant guides. Congratulations, Cara, for finishing up your guide with a giant, which is excited. But as a connector person, and we've talked about 5 voices actually here early on in our podcast. So if you haven't listened to that, go back to Leadership Voices. It's a really good one. But for me, I was like, I want to connect with others, and I wanted to get that when it wasn't that way. So what would you say, and I'll come back to you, Cara, here, what would you say to somebody that's in a group and maybe they understand the lay of the land, but they're having difficulty integrating themselves? And what bit of advice would you give them of like, hey, I've started this new job, I'm in this new role, I'm just having difficulty, whether it's the company culture or maybe their unique team, but if they're just feeling out of place in trying to, be successful in their job and career, and they're just like, man, I'm just not feeling integrated, what would you suggest, or what would you recommend to them to consider?
That's a really great question. I mean, one of the things that I think can be helpful is, especially in one of those large organizations, right, where people are so siloed and so much of the information is gleaned over the years, sort of verbally from people, is I would say if they could get a mentor, right, and find someone who is very integrated in the organization, very successful in the organization, that could be a buddy and help them, help get them integrated, could be a good way to go.
I'll throw it out to either Charlie or Bill, feel free if you guys want to jump in, or Cara too. Have you seen any, I like the mentor, that's a great idea, Cara. So have you seen any other programs or other successes? I'll just give you 2 that I saw, at least at this company, that I thought was good. They had a project management program, which was great because it was more formal, but it was a way that had different disciplines, different groups come together. And they also had a Toastmasters group that came in, I think, that they hosted. So you could go and attend, anybody could attend that, right? So those are just kind of 2 things off the top of my head. I appreciated that. But Charlie, I'll just maybe come to you first, or if you got, have you seen any, Charlie, successful or again, way, especially when somebody's feeling like I'm struggling to connect here?
Yeah, I would say the anecdote or antidote to um, not feeling connected is to connect with people and build relationships. And that's how you earn trust, by being curious and open and learning about the people and the culture and how things are, the lay of the land, right? Before you try to um, insert yourself into the environment. We have an perfect example right now. Our new help desk supervisor, his name is Julius, and we hired him because he has a lot of experience with a lot of the concepts that we're already implementing. And um, we needed somebody who is a little bit more assertive and will hold people accountable, because that's been missing. And the challenge was he came in and tried to jump to doing that, being assertive and holding people accountable without the relationship and connection building and the trust building first. And that definitely rubbed a lot of people the wrong way in the help desk team. And so the first step is always to build that connection, build that trust, get the lay of the land, learn, absorb, be curious, stay open, and just be an empty cup and take it all in before you can figure out what's working, what's not working as well as it needs to be, so that you can come up and have a discussion. Hey, this is what I noticed. How do you feel about XYZ? So it's not so like rigid and rough around the edges.
So what I hear you say, Charlie, is in this particular example is that as he's trying to integrate, that he be open and coachable to like learning these things, so he can adapt and be more welcomed. If he's not being so rigid and like, oh, I got to hold you accountable, but you can give him feedback and he can receive that and adjust.
Right, because he has learned a lot of the similar concepts, and he was just trying to implement what he thinks is best practice before getting a good feel for what's already in place. And so that definitely caused some conflict there.
Yeah. Bill, what thoughts on that, or just this idea of when you're feeling isolated?
No, it's absolutely a great way to go about it. It's integrating a new person into a team is often the same as trying to get into a cold pool, swimming pool. You kind of want to ease your way into it, but sometimes you really don't have a choice, and just jumping right in can be the only alternative you have. But as far as other ways, I've definitely been part of mentorship programs before. One company I was with actually held regular informal get-togethers, and getting to know people outside, so that in one sense, nobody's comfortable. You're all in a strange kind of environment, and that you're not really used to being around others in that kind of a way. But it's kind of a friendlier type of way to do it. And I think honestly, a combination of methods would seem to work best as far as getting people integrated into the existing team.
Well, I'll throw. I mean, you spurred a thought in my mind, Bill, as you're talking about this, because traditional office-based work, which most of us are professional services coming to an office, has changed. It's not the same way anymore. It's not where you come in the office 5 days a week and you're around all these people. And there's different integration. So like you're saying, Bill, creating an event, I think, is super important. Because how else are we going to know these people? And Cara, I'd like to get your thoughts on this, because some of this times, especially in the industry of the AEC industry, where there's a lot of people we hire part-time or as needed. They're not full-time employees, but they're still part of the team. How do you integrate those people, because it's costly to hire people and to keep them on your roster. And if you lose them, it's just this rotating thing. So, Cara, what would you say, especially for those people that are just part-time even, and they're not coming into an office every day, right?
Mhm.
What would your some thoughts or some things to consider to the business owner of how are you going to maintain that relationship? How are you going to get them integrated so that they're feeling like they're actually a part of the team and the organization and not just kind of out there floating somewhere? And what would you say, or what would you should consider as a business owner, or maybe a lead, a department, running that group, in that relationship with that kind of individual?
I would say for sure, especially because, that part-time individual is probably remote, right? They're not coming into
Mhm.
the office. And then all of us are experiencing that, where maybe all of our employees are remote. You really have to be deliberate about your communication, right? And especially with small businesses. I've been in businesses, I started in an office, there was 5 or 6 people. You didn't really have to have a formal staff meeting because you saw everybody every day, right? In the kitchen, at lunch, or by the water cooler. And once you start growing and getting larger, or you start having people who are working in other locations, communication has to be very deliberate. It has to be very consistent, I think, so that you can build that trust. Because I think that's one of the ways that trust is built, is
Mhm.
really through deliberate, consistent messaging,
Mhm.
so that people feel safe and they start to really understand the organization that they're working with. I think like Bill said, creating opportunities for people to get together in person. I mean, for field staff, is that a safety meeting maybe once a month? Maybe it's a happy hour. Anytime a project closes, perhaps there's a celebratory dinner, something like that. So creating those opportunities. Maybe everybody comes into the office on Wednesdays. And then I think another thing, especially as I look at Charlie here, is leveraging technology to
Mhm.
the greatest extent that you possibly can. And that might be hard for a small business owner, right? Because some of those platforms are substantially expensive. But I think that's really where, as we move into this remote work environment, we really have to change the way that we as leaders lead people and communicate
Mhm.
with people. And that might mean you have an employee who really only texts, or someone else really does well on Slack, or someone else it's Teams, or someone else likes phone calls, someone else likes email. And we have to sort of pivot and make sure that we're meeting employees where they're at in terms of
Mhm.
what communication style they respond the most to. And
Mhm.
I think you can, with a really well thought out technology platform, you can create those sort of virtual office environments in a
Yeah.
way, And I mean, I've seen post, your dog day, and, best office competitions. And there's all different ways that you can kind of interact with people online. So,
Yeah, I think that is important to create that. And I think thinking through that, I think just there's, like you said, Cara, there's a myriad of ways to do it. Sometimes as business owners, we just get distracted, and there's not distracted, there's just other things on our plate. And so finding, if that's not your strength, and we, all of us here in some way, are, this is an area that we actually like and focus in on, but that may not be your strength. So understanding where that is for you and finding the right people in the organization, or an outside consultant. I mean, Charlie, this is something I know you do, because you're helping them evaluate you know the how do we use the right platforms, what are the right tools, and don't make it overly complicated, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, less is more. I mean, leverage as much as what your current business licensing already comes with.
mm,
I mean, the Microsoft platform, I have to say, I mean, even Google, the G Suite platform, there's tons of different tech and communication channels to keep the team engaged and connected. So for the most part, businesses that we deal with use Microsoft, and so we actually internally use Teams, right, for our weekly get together. We have a dedicated training every Friday morning, specifically on our prioritizing client experience.
Mhm.
And so going back to your original question of integrating part-time people and things like that, the mistake that we made is not including our part-time people on those, because we have a overnight, because we have a 24/7 security operations center. So our overnight staff, we did it intentionally in the morning so that it can include that person. But we definitely don't have the consistency with our part-time people because they're not a part of that. They're not part of the 2 daily huddles that we have, the beginning of the day, the end of the day. And so the other thing, going back to the, post your cat day or whatnot, you can leverage Viva Engage, which used to be called Yammer. That comes with your Microsoft licensing. So that's like an internal private social media. So that way you're not blasting your regular Teams chat that is supposed to be for work with personal stuff, right? So just use up all those basic communication channels that already come with the business licensing to keep the team engaged and connected.
And that's why they need to talk with you, Charlie. They might not even know what's available. Right? They may be paying for it. They might not even know that it's there. Exactly. I know, Bill, we're gonna lose you here because you're gonna have to jump off. But you know, this idea of communication, especially intergenerational communication, Bill, and just last thought before you hop off with us tonight.
I was just thinking that in addition to especially with worldwide teams having to do interlanguage communication, even within the U.S. we have intergenerational communication issues between Gen Z and millennials and Generation X, and Lord help you if you have a boomer on the team. It's just the language that's used by them, especially in their preferred electronic communication, is just so different between the different generations that a lot can be lost. And so it becomes even more important to get the team together. There are people who can help you learn how to communicate with the different generations. I know sometimes it's a big joke about the newer generations, the younger generations talking, the way they talk to each other. But it's deadly serious because these are people who are going to contribute to your team, to your work, and you need to know how to communicate with them and they with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, this is important that we're thinking about this, and I think to this point, and Cara, I'll have you talk about this for a minute here. Is this generational gap right now that we're seeing, and what's motivating each generation? There's different motivators, right? So what motivates a person or even a group of a team, and you bring somebody else into that team and they're a different generation or whatever, it may not be the same. So Cara, would you maybe just talk to that? And
Sure. Yeah, no, I think Bill's point was excellent. And I know that there's a lot of studies about conflict in the workplace. And I think, we might think that it's nationalities or differing genders or things like that get a lot of attention. But actually the most conflict in the workplace is intergenerational. And particularly given how small Gen X is, right? It's half the size of the boomer generation and then millennial generation, which means, just through as boomers retire, there isn't going to be a Gen X leader who's going to be able to take those spots, right? There's going to be people from generations considerably below a baby boomer who's going to take those spots, which will magnify that type of generational conflict. So,
to that point, Cara, I mean, if there's a gap like that, I think we're starting to see that in the marketplace now. In the leadership, right? I had a talk with a gentleman named Shane Silsby. He used to be the Orange County Public Works Director, and he's focusing on public work. He's focusing on the public sector, but there's this gap in the public sector too. We're mostly talking private, but the same thing in the public sector where you're losing this core leadership team, and then you have these younger generations, and they don't have the example of how do I integrate people, because I haven't even integrated myself yet. and I'm supposed to bring in and lead other people. That's a real challenge in our in organizations.
Yeah, and where many of us, I'm sure, sort of learned on the job, right? And we became leaders over a period of 10 or 15 years. And there will be people who will be asked to be a leader in 3 or 4, right? And so I think that's where formal mentoring, formal leadership development programs, coaching will become a lot more important for those younger generations, mentoring, partnering generations together in the workplace to learn from each other could be a good way to go too. So
I mean, yeah.
This is a huge, definitely a big topic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is another. Now Cara's gonna have to come back. So because there's a lot more to talk about. We just said good night to Bill, but I think this is probably a good place to maybe put a pin in it for night while we're coming back around, because I think this intergenerational component. It's a whole nother topic in and of itself, but it's something we have to be very mindful of as we're integrating them. Because I mean, just alone that I've been helping teams, the 20 somethings, 30 something, now they've lived under, remote work for a few years. And now that's kind of almost the expected thing, right? I want to work. Don't get me wrong. I want to work, but I want to work in this capacity. And so how do we integrate somebody that's their motivation? If you tell them you have to come to the office 5 days a week, and that's part of being the team, they're like, I'm out. I mean, some of them you do need, some jobs you absolutely need that. Others are like, how do we make that work so the business still gets what it needs and the employee still gets what they need, and it feels like it's a win-win versus, because there's existing teams right now, and I've talked with a few. I was just at the Desert Tortoise Symposium a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to some folks that were saying, well, they're mandating us coming back into the office for what? Well, they say it's for team building, but nobody else that I work there is going to be in the office that day. So what's the team integration there? So I think that there's some things in the marketplace right now that there's knee-jerk responses, and we're trying to figure out how do we calibrate that? What's the right mix?
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen that too. Here you see you shake your heads.
Yeah, there's a lot there. There really is a lot there in terms of back to work strategies, and probably
we're going to come back to, so what we'll do is we have many more topics to cover here. So as you guys are listening, you like this, leave your comments, let us know. Please share this. This is the exciting part. If you're resonating with one of these topics and you're like, hey, I'd like to join in, we have different guests. That's why I have Cara here, Charlie's back, Bill. We had Doc C last week, so we alternate our roundtable, which is fun to hear different voices. But final thoughts, I'll come to you, Charlie, first, and then Cara here in the podcast. Again, as we think about, you talked about core values and assessing them, Charlie. And again, maybe just share a success story or just a moment of like, hey, this is successful team integration. This is where I felt like, hey, we were really doing it right. I want to encourage people as they listen to us wrap up tonight. And I'll come to you, Cara, as well on that.
Yeah. So because of the generation gap that was just touched on, there are going to be different things that the different generations would think as normal, right, and acceptable. And so being able to clearly define what success looks like from a culture standpoint, from the way we want to communicate, like what Cara had mentioned, giving people the roadmap. And so we actually had created a credo card, which defines because our action statement is always deliver wow. So we actually define what does wow feel like. We have our never and always list. So things that we know that are pitfalls in the way people communicate across the different generations. For example, we say never say no, because we're very heavily service oriented, and always, present what you can do and do whatever it takes to make it right. And so just little things that make the world of difference. And so we have a whole 2-3 pager covering what does well feel like, our core values, and the never and always. We have a list of different things that are common triggers or irritants among our service communications. So that's been working really well for us, and we actually go over one thing from that credo card at each of our huddles.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
That's just being intentional, Charlie, and thingy that putting us in the forefront of everybody's mind.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. Cara, how about you? Final thoughts, feedback on that? Sharon?
Yeah, no, I think those are all really great best practices. I think, one thing I just wanted to mention that I have used as a tool, particularly with integrating mergers and acquisitions, or when you have teams that are coming in that really have never worked together before, is really doing, as much as you can, doing stay interviews and tailoring an interview to each staff member about what do they love about the existing team that they're in. If they were from an acquisition, why did they stay in their job? What did they love doing every day? What's really important? What do they value? And then taking that and really doing an analysis so that you can really see and build on, when you integrate the teams together, the commonalities, right? And how they're going to work together, by knowing really what people's values are and what they found really attractive about their team as you create new teams. So that's, I think that doing interviews like that is a cool way to get a lot of
I like that.
information.
That's having a stay interview. Like, what is it that keeps you here?
Right.
Had you, because it may be different for different people. There's different motivations, right? We talked about different generations. Could be a flexible work environment. Could be people I like. Could be the type of work that I get to do.
Could be the projects.
The projects. It could be a variety of different things. If you're not clear about that, you might be focusing on the wrong things and emphasizing, hey, well, you want more of this, and they're like, not really, So these are great ideas, concepts, real world tested. As you guys are listening to this and watching us, these are things that have actually been applied and tested and work. So please use them and reach out to us. Reach out to Cara, Charlie, Bill, myself. We're here to help you guys. Leave a message. Reach out to us. We'll respond directly to you. That's why we created the Business Roundtable Podcast, as a way to connect and share, and hopefully bring victory in your workplace. And so we appreciate you guys joining with us. Until next time, thank you all. Have a great night.
All right. You too, David.
Thank you so much,
You
David.
too, Cara. Have a good